You're listening to episode 88 of Liz's Healthy Table.
Looking for a healthy new way to feed your family without the hassle and hype? Welcome to Liz's Healthy Table, where your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Liz Weiss, serves up fresh and flavorful recipes with a tasty side of science, good nutrition, and fun. Are you and your family ready for some wholesome food that tastes great too? Don't change that dial. Your food adventure starts here.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone, and Happy New Year. Happy 2021. We made it. And I'll bet you are so looking forward to having more fun in 2021. I am. And if you're like me, I bet you are looking forward to having more fun in the kitchen in 2021, cooking up nourishing recipes that your whole family will love. And just in time for that New Year's goal is my guest, Mona Dolgov. She is author of Satisfy, a cookbook packed with 120 easy and delicious gluten-free recipes made with real ingredients, real portions, and lots of vegetables. Every recipe is nutrient-dense and clocks in at 500 calories or less. Every recipe will leave you feeling full and satisfied. So on the show, you're going to learn about Mona's career in nutrition and food. You're going to get lots of recipe inspiration with dishes like chocolate avocado cookies. Yes, we're starting with dessert. Pecan-crusted chicken, we could all use a new chicken recipe, and salmon scampi salad with lots of vegetables. She also has a hummus with half the calories that we will talk about. We're also going to talk about simple ways to cut added sugar from your family's diet, always a hot topic. We will talk about why Mona believes that 65% of your plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables. And we'll talk about the cooking classes that Mona does on Zoom and on Facebook. If you want to learn more about Satisfy or get yourself a copy, head to monadolgov.com. Now, the book will officially launch later in the spring. It's not officially out, but it is officially out if you go to Mona's website. You can find the book there. She's got it for sale. It is monadolgov.com/satisfy-cookbook. That's a lot to remember, so I'm going to share a link to it in the show notes. Oh, and guess what? We are hosting a giveaway of Satisfy on lizshealthytable.com/podcast. So be sure to head to the show notes from today's show, episode 88, to enter for a chance to win. U.S. entries only, please. And I will run the giveaway through January 20th. A few friendly reminders. If you love the show, tell a friend about it or post a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on lizshealthytable.com. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's show with all the recipes and resources, and follow me on Instagram at Liz Weiss. So when I sit down to dinner, I want to feel nourished and satisfied. And that's why I love Mona's new cookbook, Satisfy. Hey, Mona, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Liz. I'm so excited you invited me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Well, I'm excited about Satisfy. I have been cooking from your cookbook. I adore it. I just told you I had a cup of tea and one of your avocado chocolate chip yummy cookies.
Oh, my favorite.
But we're not going to get into the book just yet because I want everybody to get to know you just a little bit. You know, you and I go way back. We met and I am a woman of a certain age, but if my memory serves correctly, we met many, many years ago when you were working at Crock-Pot. And, you know, back then, a lot of people had a Crock-Pot. No one had an air fryer. People didn't have the Instant Pot. The Crock-Pot was like the be all and end all. But you and I met when you worked at Crock-Pot, right?
Yes. And actually, I know exactly where we met. We met at Johnson & Wales in Providence, Rhode Island. And that was really my beginning of wanting to create new cookbooks. So I had created this whole publishing side of Crock-Pot where we were going to create all these recipes and all these cookbooks so that people would have positive experiences with the Crock-Pot. So we did this recipe competition at Johnson & Wales, and you were one of our judges. And I remember it was a Saturday, and we were with all the culinary students who created all these yummy recipes. And all I remember is being really full at the end of the day. And meeting you, of course.
Yeah, that was fun. I know you worked with Crock-Pot. You were the Crock-Pot queen, right?
Yes.
And that really makes sense because if you think about it, this is a long time ago, like in probably the early to mid 90s, when, you've got these appliances and the consumer wants to cook healthfully in that appliance. They don't necessarily want to make that Crock-Pot recipe where you add the can of the Coke and then you add the chicken. Like there was all these like weird recipes. So now you've been working, when you worked with them, you worked with these culinary students that created beautiful recipes. So I know it's always been a passion of yours as you've worked with brands over the years to take the brand, but create really healthy content to go with it. And I think you have a nutrition background as well. Just give us like the backstory on your career. And then we want to hear about like where you live and your kids and all that good stuff too.
Okay. So career-wise, in a 5-second elevator speech, as they usually say, is I have a degree from Cornell University in nutritional biochemistry. And I was probably a person ahead of my time because I'm of the age similar to you, Liz. So what I did with my degree is that I decided that I wanted to work on the industries, the food industry side of the business. And really, I've always had this undying passion of reducing obesity in the country, if not the country, the world. So I wanted to try to use my degree in a way that I can impact a lot of people. So right after college, I worked actually as a food chemist for Kraft and then switched over into a marketing capacity. I'd gotten an MBA along the way. And over the course of the past 30 plus years, I worked in a whole bunch of different industries related to food, whether it be the food industry, a food corporation, on 2 appliance companies. I worked, as you mentioned, for Jarden, now Newell, which makes crock pots. I worked for Shark Ninja, where I was head of the culinary innovation team there for blenders and slow cookers and things like that. And I also worked in a retailer standpoint, doing a whole bunch of marketing programs for Stop and Shop and Giant, all with the premise of really trying to make the world healthier, or just trying to create recipes and content to give people what I call kitchen confidence. I started my own company 5 years ago called You Live Right, where my role is to help clients, whether it be celebrity chefs or corporations, to really help them with recipe content. I have a publishing side to my business. I have a whole team from graphic designers to printing facilities to try to really create recipe content, cookbooks, marketing programs. And that's really what I've been doing over the past 5 or 6 years. And I have a whole myriad of clients. I have appliance clients. I have chef clients. I have dietitian clients who really want to help kind of bring all of that together into one big marketing piece, cookbook piece, or whatever they need from a digital standpoint, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. So you do a lot of recipe development. I'm sure that your kitchen must be a very busy place. I know you live outside of Boston. You're like me. You're in the Boston area.
Right.
And so just tell me, like, where do you live? Talk about your kids a little bit. And I'm sure, I will tell you, my kitchen's always been a busy place. I have one son, Simon, who is very good at cooking. And then there's Josh, the finance guy, who refuses to cook because he figures I'll hire someone if I have to. So tell me about just your family.
Yeah, so I live outside of Boston in a town called Natick. I have 2 wonderful children. I have a daughter and a son. Rachel's 27 and Scotty's 25. They actually don't live in the Boston area. Rachel lives in New Jersey, outside of New York City, in Hoboken. Scotty lives in Washington, D.C. I actually taught my kids how to cook when they were really little, so really never to really feel intimidated by it. And both my kids have their specialties of what they really like to make. It's kind of fun. So my son Scott, for example, he did a lot of traveling while he was in college to the Middle East. So he's like Mediterranean kid as far as cooking. He makes the best shakshuka, which he inspired me in my cookbook to come up with a new kind of shakshuka recipe. And he's really great at just kind of coming up with, sauces and one-pot meals, and he really cooks for himself. And I'm telling you, Liz, he's going to be a great chick magnet for when he meets the right woman. I mean, woo, he's just a great, great cook, and he loves to do it too. And I love when he comes home because we get to cook together. And Rachel's also a great cook. She also loves making a lot of Southwestern meals. She lives with her boyfriend, Adam, and they make a lot of fajitas and fish tacos. And she's also a great soup maker. She's an awesome. I passed my generational chicken soup recipe to her, and she's like an expert, and it feels so good that I can pass that tradition to her now. But both my kids love to cook. They both have their own careers. Scotty's in the communications business. Rachel is also in the consulting business too. But they're awesome. I wish they lived closer.
I hear you. I know. And it is, I said this all along through COVID that with Simon home over the summer, it was actually really fun to cook again for him, to get back into family meals. Cause we miss that. And yeah, so no, that's good to know that they like to cook. And just so everybody knows, this is like the weirdest thing. Mona, you sent me a text one day, and it turns out that your daughter is dating this guy whose mom is my sorority sister. I'm like, you just can't make this stuff up.
No, we're related. We're going to be soul sisters for life, Liz.
I'm telling you, it's just so crazy. All right, let's get into Satisfy, because this is a phenomenal cookbook, and I want you to give us the motivation for why you wrote this cookbook.
Yeah, don't you like that motivation? I have that in the intro of my book. And I also like the word satisfied. It took me a long time to figure out what to call this book. And I really like the word satisfy, because satisfied to me is very multidimensional. It means having, and this is really why I wrote the book. Satisfied to me is having the kitchen confidence, that you don't feel nervous when you go into the kitchen, especially now. Like, what am I going to make for dinner? What do I do? How do I shop? What do I get? And so knowing that you can go to this guide and look something up and feel good and know that the recipe is going to come out and it's going to be great and it's going to be easy, you feel satisfied. Also, satisfied from just a satiety level is really a big thing for me. So many recipes that are out there, and I've worked on a lot of recipes. I mean, in my career, I've always been kind of like, the Wizard of Oz, who's like behind the curtain. I've probably written in my career about 20 or 30 cookbooks, Liz. And I've always really been a stickler on, the good nutritionals, but also the portion amounts. And I find with a lot of recipes that are out there, it may say it serves 8, but it really doesn't, and only maybe serves 3 or 4. And then you get all kind of famished as far as really, well, how much does this really serve and what does this really do? And so one of the sticklers, my motivation to write Satisfy, is to create a cookbook that when I'm telling you that you're making, like most of the recipes have 2 to 4 portions, but when you get your portion, you're going to be going, oh my God, this is like amazing. And you're going to feel full after, you're going to feel satisfied after. And no one's really ever gone in that angle before. And I've been really, from my nutritional biochemistry background, really scientific in how I'm going to do that to make the caloric amount right on target, but yet have everybody really feel full and satiated and really create healthy, delicious meals. Right, and that's really been my motivation to really write this book, to really do that,
And you talk about 500 calories or less for each of your recipes. And I know you go really heavy on the veggies. And so that you feel, I know I made a recipe in the book where I used green beans and mandarin oranges. It called for scallops, but I used shrimp. And I said to my husband, my gosh, we have a lot of green beans. And so it's like, instead of having that like big, potato, although I love potatoes and I do have a potato podcast coming up, but instead of having like the big roll or a big mound of rice on the side, it's like, we're going to go heavy on those green beans. And so you do feel full and satisfied. And I do think for people who are watching calories, that's a stickler. They're like, I'm starving. This isn't working for me.
Right. Right. And I think the other objective that I have, look at all the research that's out there now about being more, what I like this expression, being more plant forward. Mm-hmm. Not so much plant-based, but plant-forward. How do I get more vegetables into what I eat? Because vegetables are great, as you know, great phytonutrients, a lot of fiber, and fiber keeps you full too. And so not being afraid to kind of explore different vegetables and ensuring one of the things, when you look at that, and I have it in my book of what is the great plate or what is the perfect plate to have. Most guidelines always say have 50% of your plate to be vegetables and then split up with the protein and the healthy fats and the grains. Whereas I'm being a little bit more assertive. I really think your plate should be more like 65% vegetables. And there's so many options right now that you can sub in more vegetables instead of, for example, one of my favorite things to do is I love brown rice, but sometimes if I want to lighten it up, I might use cauliflower rice and do like a combination of the two together. And guess what? I get another added cup of vegetables. It's keeping me full. I get more of the fiber, and it's still a satisfying meal.
You know what I just noticed? I noticed at the market, not just now the frozen cauliflower rice, but the frozen broccoli rice.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
there's broccoli rice.
Brilliant.
There's broccoli rice, there's zucchini rice, there's carrot rice. There's so many different options. And that's another thing in my book, that just like you swapped out the scallops with the shrimp, this book will provide you with inspiration. So if you want to take a recipe and just use the basis of the recipe, but change your protein or change the cauliflower rice to carrot rice or broccoli rice, go right ahead. And it's going to come out great, and you can be confident that the recipes work. And that's another big thing. You know, I work with a team of chefs, and we test all of our recipes at least 3 times before we publish it in any book. So I feel so proud about this book, because I know that we've tested these recipes like a lot, and even more so. And actually, I've actually given these recipes to friends and family to try before I even publish this book too.
Well, that's important too. Nothing is more irritating than a recipe that doesn't work. So you say in the book that you've got real ingredients, real portions, real simple, really delicious. And I love that philosophy. And I am curious, and I know this is such a hard question, but right now, do you have a favorite recipe in the book?
I have a lot of favorite. I would say I wish I could pick a recipe from every chapter, but I have a lot of favorite recipes for different reasons. So one of my favorite recipes is like a recipe from my mom. So because every time I make it, I think of her, and that's my chicken marsala recipe. And I know my sisters use that recipe all the time too. So it's nice having a good family recipe in there as well. I also like the egg roll in a bowl, but I specifically like that recipe because one of the things in the book that I've done is create sauces and salad dressings that will knock your socks off, that you can use in a variety of different ways. So one thing about the egg roll in a bowl recipe, I created this peanut sauce, Liz. It's so unbelievably good, so delicious, that I just love it, and that I can use that peanut sauce for a dip. I can use it as a salad dressing. I can use it as a marinade for chicken breast or whatever. And so I really like the egg roll in a bowl because you're using a lot of veggies and, you know, you're using that peanut sauce. But I love it because it has that almost as like a signature thing that kind of goes along with it. And what I've done in the cookbook, in the back of the book, I've made the index really user-friendly so that if you wanted to just find my secret sauces and dressings, it's in there in the back. So that's cool too. And my other favorite recipe is I make a smoked salmon salsa that I really like during the summer. And it's just a combination of different vegetables. And I use dill instead of cilantro. And I use smoked salmon because you get that extra protein. And it's just beautiful, too, because it has gorgeous peppers, the colors of peppers and smoked salmon, a little egg. And it's just a really, really nice recipe as well.
So the burning question, I've got to interrupt you because now I'm dying to know. What is in your peanut sauce?
Okay. So my peanut sauce is actually very easy to make. It's just a combination of peanut butter. But guess what? If you don't want to use peanut butter, if you have a peanut allergy, it's really good with almond butter. And if you're a tree nut allergy person and you want to use sunflower seed butter, you can use sunflower seed butter too, which is so amazing. So it's that. And I put in some fresh ginger, a little bit of coconut aminos. I tend to use coconut aminos versus soy sauce because of my gluten sensitivity, a little bit of honey. Sometimes I throw in a little crushed red pepper to give it a little zip, and a little rice vinegar and sesame oil. Yeah.
I love that combo. And are you, I know now I'm bouncing everywhere because I'm super excited about the book. Gluten. Now Simon, my younger one, does not eat gluten because he has chronic Lyme disease, and people who listen to the podcast, I have talked about him. It's a nightmare in my life, and I'm sure in his, but he's 22, and that's a whole nother story to like try to, advise him. Anyway, I did take him off gluten like 2 years ago just because his whole gut was like a mess from all the antibiotics. Anyway, he's gluten-free. I gave up gluten for a while, and now I've sort of slowly added it back in. I don't eat a ton of it because I think I was a little sensitive to it, like some arthritic symptoms. I did a show on anti-inflammatory diet with Carolyn Williams. If you haven't listened, folks, tune into that show. It was great. But anyway, your book is gluten-free, and I'm curious why. You're satisfying us with the portions and all the veggies and all these cool, great flavors, but it's also gluten-free. So you have this huge like net now you have cast to pull people into your world. So why gluten-free?
Well, for a lot of reasons. One is I'm a little bit gluten sensitive myself. I kind of discovered it. I used to get bloating, and also I was getting like arthritic symptoms as well. And I found when there's so many other options that you can use instead of, with pastas, there's all the bean pastas and all these whole grains that I would just try. And I could not believe how much better I felt. And also, as part of my business, I also see private clients too. And I found that when I put them on gluten-free diets, that their whole life changed. And a lot of people, all of a sudden, when they say they're gluten-free, they feel like they're being deprived, or my life's a nightmare, I can't eat anything anymore. And another reason why I wanted to write this book is that you can eat a lot of things. And actually, look at this book. It has over 120 recipes, and there's so much to choose from. And what I wanted to just try to also just send the message for people who are gluten sensitive, you're not being deprived. There's so many options. And here's a great book to do that. And if you're not gluten sensitive, it's still a great cookbook. And if you want to incorporate, for example, regular breadcrumbs instead of gluten-free breadcrumbs, go right ahead. Or if you want to use regular pasta instead of gluten-free pasta, that's okay too. So I felt that it almost squelched a fear of people who are gluten sensitive, or people who have celiac, or you just can't have gluten anymore, that they can't eat anything. But I think with this cookbook, I think you can eat a lot, right?
I agree. And I will agree too that there's so many great products. Now, I'm not the type of baker, for example, that's going to mix, the sorghum flour with the tapioca flour and the whatever flour. I am the kind of baker that goes to the Stop and Shop, goes down the specialty food aisle and sees the Bob's Red Mill gluten-free 1-to-1 baking flour. That is what I use. That is what I use. And I will let Bob, who by the way is like 95 years old, I will let Bob of Bob's Red Mill do the work for me. And so I was super excited to see in your book that you use this gluten-free 1-to-1 baking flour. I use it. People can see that on my blog when I'm baking now. I use that. And I think that's awesome. Like I know, gosh, I'm trying to think which recipe I saw, because you have so many great ones, but that's a product you like as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, when I write my cookbook, I write it, but I work with chefs, and I too, I'm not a big baker as well, but I have this woman who I love. Her name is Andrea, and she's an amazing, amazing dessert baker chef. And so I said to her, here's some recipes that I'm thinking about. So she and I actually developed a couple of the recipes together, and she was a big fan, as I am, of this 1-to-1 baking flour, because that it's going to work, and that's one thing when you're gluten-free with baking, you're always worried, like, is the texture going to be quite right? Is it going to be okay? But having this product, this 1-to-1 flour, you don't, as you mentioned, you don't have to worry about the sorghum and the xanthan gum and the tapioca. You really have a resource to really make great cookies. And I know I have a great pecan sandy cookie that I really, really love. I have like a blackberry apple crumble where I use a little bit of the flour as well. It's just so great.
Yeah, it's so versatile. And then there's, all the whole grains. You mentioned the brown rice. You mentioned all these bean-based pastas. But quinoa is another one. There's so many great whole grains that are out there that are gluten-free as well.
Right. One of the other, it's funny, my childhood, did you eat kasha when you were a kid, like kasha vanishkas?
Oh, kashi. Yeah. My mom called it kashi. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to have kasha vanishkas. Well, buckwheat, as you know, is gluten-free as well. So one of the recipes in my book that I wanted to bring kasha back, it's kind of like was always a childhood grain that I kind of forgot about. So I created this great vegan recipe for kasha with a pesto sauce and a bunch of vegetables. And it's just so, so yummy and delicious. And it has such a great nutty taste to it, which is just so awesome.
I did make your grilled salmon scampi salad.
Yes.
And I have made, what else? Oh my God. Like I said, I made those avocado cookies. But talk us through the grilled salmon scampi salad recipe, because is that on the cover of your book? I'll have to go back to your book now.
I have it right in front of me. No, that's my other salmon. It's not on the cover. It's on the inside cover of the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have a digital copy. So
yeah.
I'm just sitting here on my computer now scrolling through, but talk us through that particular recipe, because I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I remember exactly. I was driving. I don't know how you think about recipes. I don't know. I think about new recipes. I do a lot in the shower when I'm driving. I remember driving back from vacation. We were on a beach vacation. I remember driving home. I'm saying, I need a new swing on scampi. What kind of sauce or whatever? And I thought about, what about scampi with salmon? Like, that's kind of different because you think of scampi, you think of shrimp, right?
Sure.
So I said, okay, let's combine the whole scampi thing with salmon. And then I thought about satiety and keeping full. One of my little tricks that I share with people is that the combination of eating warm food with cool food together in one dish makes it extra satisfying. So what the salmon scampi salad does, it actually does that. You have the warm salmon, and then I also have grilled vegetables that go along with that, which I believe are zucchini and peppers. So that's going on the grill.
It's actually asparagus.
Asparagus, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I will be your co-author now.
Thank you. Bell pepper. Actually, but you can use zucchini too.
Of course.
Bell peppers and asparagus. And what you do, you grill that at the same time. I use a great light sauce. It's because salmon's a fatty fish, you don't have to use a lot of oil. So it has a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, fresh lemon juice, some garlic. You put that marinade over the veggies and over the salmon, throw that on the grill for about 10 minutes. And then you have this big bowl of fresh greens and tomatoes. And then once the salmon and when the vegetables are done, and what's great, the vegetables take about 7 minutes. The salmon takes about 10. So from a coordination standpoint, which is something else that I think about, is that you're not going too cuckoo bananas as far as like, how long does this cook? How long does that cook? You just know that when you want to flip over the salmon at 7 minutes, then you know your vegetables are ready. So you take the vegetables off at 7, you flip over your salmon for another 3 minutes, and 10 minutes later you have your warm veggies, you have your salmon over greens. And then I actually have a vinaigrette recipe in my book, which is so awesome. It's just a very simple vinaigrette where I use an equal balance of olive oil and vinegar with a little Dijon mustard and some fresh either thyme or rosemary, and you got it ready to go. And it's just the whole combination of, I don't know about you, but biting into something that's cool and warm at the same time, it's just so amazing. So,
and I'm with you too. Like last night, all right, I have to tell you what I made. I know you said your son loves Middle Eastern food, and I talked about this in my last podcast. So I have been doing masterclass. I decided since I can't travel this year with COVID, I'm going to travel the world and learn different world cuisines. And so my favorite chef is, besides you, Mona, is
Otto Lengi, right?
Otto Lengi. You know, I'm obsessed with him. And so I signed up for masterclass, and he is one of the chefs. And so last night, because I'm now working my way through his class, I made his hummus, and it's hummus with confit garlic, basically garlic cloves that you just bubble and cook in olive oil for 25 minutes, in a pot. And it had tahini sauce on it. So lots of layers of flavor, but it was so good. And then I just literally sauteed up some shrimp. I had some leftover asparagus. I had some cherry tomatoes. I sliced them in half, sauteed that up, and I served the warm shrimp with the hummus. So good. And my husband, who's a carb guy, he's, of course, has to have a piece of bread or toast with it. That's fine. He loves that. And I said, I have plenty. I'm satisfied. I have plenty in this bowl. But, it's just fun, to have the warm with the cold hummus, or the hummus was room temperature. And I do think, as I look at your book, I think it's very adult focused, but I think families and kids, it's perfect for them too, because there's so many ways to play. Like you said, oh, this salmon recipe is with zucchini and peppers. I'm like, no, it's with asparagus. But you can make it with so many different veggies. You don't have, you could do different kinds of fish. Like if you're a mom and your kids are like, I don't like salmon, use cod, use something mild, use chicken. You can start to play, right?
Yeah, you could do chicken scampi. You can do cod scampi. I mean, and it's all about just having the right sauces and just knowing kind of the timings. One of the other things that I like about in my book, in the chapter that's all about sheet pan meals, which we haven't gone over yet, I know we're going to go over that in a minute, is that I have a chart that explains to you how long different proteins cook and what vegetables cook at around the same time, so that you can kind of mix and match. And so you don't have to think about it. So you just have to look on that chart. Okay, I want to make chicken. Okay, what cooks around the same time of chicken? Okay, I'll do that. And you just make your own dinner, and you can look up a sauce in the back and just do whatever you want for dinner, which is so great and easy. And that's the whole purpose is just getting that confidence and empowering you to just have a good time in the kitchen and, make it fun.
Keep it simple. And, I did get ahead of myself because I have a habit of doing this, but I want to just go back in time to the beginning of the interview. And I want you to just tell us with Satisfy, we talked about the motivation, But when you open up that book, what are the chapters? Like what will people discover in terms of chapters? And I hear you turning the pages. What, is the book, by the way, hardcover or softcover? Because I have the digigal copy. So I'm curious.
It's hardcover.
Ooh.
That was one of my big things. Like, when the Wizard of Oz comes out of the curtain to write her own book, I'm going.
You're going for the big guns.
I'm going for the big guns. It's hardcover. It's pretty. It's nice. And it's organized in a very simple way. So basically, it's based upon meal occasion. But when it comes to the meal part, it then goes by the part of the kitchen that you're going to use to make it. So the recipes are organized as, I call it anytime breakfast, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I have breakfast for dinner, don't you?
Love that. Oh my gosh, all the time. Are you kidding me?
Right.
All the time.
Yeah. So I have a chapter called Anytime Breakfast. That's a combination of egg breakfast, protein shakes, protein pancakes, what else? Sweet potato hashes, egg muffins and things like that, omelets and things like that. Then I have a whole section in the beginning of the book of spice blends. That's one of the things that when I was creating this book, I used to do pre-COVID, I used to have dinner lessons at my house, and people would come over to Mona's Kitchen, and we used to cook together. And everybody was always afraid of that spice department in the supermarket has like over 100 spices. Which ones do I choose, and how do I do that? And the whole fear of spiceophobia, if that's a word. So one of the things
it's not.
I think it's kind of, motivation, spiceophobia, right?
It's a word now.
It's a word now. So what I did in the book is create 4 spice blends, which is a great thing to do. So there's a basic roasting spice blend, a Southwestern spice blend, a barbecue spice blend, and a Mediterranean spice blend that you can make it yourself. You don't have to worry, because a lot of times there are spice blends in the stores, but they're filled with, not a lot of salt or caking agents and things like that. But isn't it cool to be able to make your own spice blend at home? So I have 4 spice blends. So that's in the beginning of the book. Kinds of sets the stage. Okay, then we have salads and soups, where salads can be sides or main dishes, sheet pan meals, skillet meals, and then I have countertop meals, which include air fryer, pressure cooker, slow cooker type meals, and then, of course, skillet meals and desserts. Oh, and then the best chapter is
I know what it is.
Snackertaining.
Another Mona word. Wait a minute.
Motivation. Snackertaining.
Snackertaining.
Spiceophobia.
I love this. And you know what? I love the snackertaining idea, because especially during COVID, when you might be brave and have like a neighbor over, maybe you sit outside. Like I have totally been into doing the snack boards, the cheese boards, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
But I create 2 separate ones so that like if we have another couple over, they can sit, 6 feet apart. They get their own snackertaining zone, and then we have our own. So what are some of your recipes? Like, do you have a favorite recipe? Because we are a snacking society. I mean, let's be real. So I don't know. Well, let's see. We talked about, I was talking about hummus before. I know you have a hummus recipe with half the calories. I will tell you, Otto Lengi, I am oozing olive oil, right? I mean, I am like going through so much olive oil. I just said to Tim, I got to buy more olive oil, because this man is insane when it comes to olive oil, which is a good thing. But you cut the calories in half for hummus. How'd you do it?
I don't put any olive oil in. So basically, believe it or not, and I played around with this because everybody loves hummus. And I always view hummus as a great dip, but also as a great spread to add to sandwiches or for a snack. And, I just had gone to Israel a year ago, and I saw the chefs really putting a lot of olive oil in it. And olive oil is great for you, but it's also extremely calorie dense. So if there's a way that you can have the benefit of the beans and the deliciousness of hummus, I went daring, could I do it without the olive oil? And frankly, if you whip it up in a food processor, you don't really need it, and it's just as delicious. The only thing I do has garlic, 2 cloves of garlic in it, which I do saute in a little olive oil before, and I throw that in there. But one of the things, I did miss a little bit of the taste of olives, so one of the things I do is I add some chopped Kalamata olives at the very end, so that way when you're taking your little dipful of hummus, you get that olive burst at the end. And it's really delicious, and it's yummy. And it's kind of an interesting texture, too, because you have that nice smoothness of the hummus with the cumin and the garlic. And then you get that little burst of olive when you like dip it into a piece of, celery or carrot or whatever.
So I love that you saute the garlic, because I do not like raw garlic. I just cannot digest it. Not a good thing. So with Otto Lengi, he made that comfy, sounds very fancy, garlic. He essentially cooks it in olive oil. So you're
Right.
cooking the olive oil, you sweeten it. But you know the other thing he does? So a few months ago, someone posted on my Facebook that her secret to hummus success was to add ice cubes to it at the end.
Interesting.
Now, Otto Lengi adds ice water. And why he does that is because he likes to have a really light and fluffy hummus.
Yes.
And so at the very end, it's in the food processor and you're pouring it up and you just add a little bit of ice water as you go till it gets this fluffy consistency.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I have cold water in my recipe too. So along the same lines. Yes.
Yeah.
It does make it fluffy.
Add a few ice cubes.
Right.
We had a neighbor come over and they brought a little gift. This is back in the summer. And it was an orchid. And I thought, oh gosh, I am literally going to kill this poor plant. I felt sad. You should be happy when someone brings you like a little hostess gift. And I'm thinking this poor plant is going to die. So I read the instructions and it says once a week, water it, quote unquote, with 3 ice cubes. Basically, it's a 1/4 cup of water, but the cute little gimmick is throw 3 ice cubes in. So every
smart.
week I throw 3 ice cubes in and I water this plant and it is still alive and it is thriving. I don't overwater. I don't underwater. It is alive and well.
I'm going to go get one.
You should. They're so pretty. So pretty. I'm very proud of myself, I will say.
You should be.
I have not killed it. Oh, my husband's walking in. Hello, Tim. I'm doing a podcast.
Oh, that's
I'm
nice.
recording. Do you want to say
Tim.
hi?
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
This
Tim.
is Liz's wonderful husband welcoming you virtually to Nantucket.
Yes, where we are recording.
Is there anything I can add to the podcast?
You can actually exit the room now, so Mona and I can finish our recording.
Hi,
I'd be
Tim.
happy
Nice
do
to meet
that,
you
but
over
could
the
I just
phone.
grab my computer first?
You can grab your computer. So we're not going to edit this out because we have to give Tim. Tim was actually, Mona, he was in my very first podcast episode. He made a cameo, and now 3 years later, here he is again.
Hi, Tim.
Rockstar.
Nice to meet
Mona
you.
says hi.
Hi, Mona.
Mona, you actually met Tim because remember we ran into you at Symphony Hall at this lecture series they were
Yes.
doing. Remember you and Doug walked in, and I know Mona's husband, Doug, because I killed my back about 2 years ago. And I was so desperate and I went to see Doug and he helped me. So he gave me all these exercises. He saved me. So I know Doug. He's my physiatrist.
And he's your hero and my hero too.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's funny. So snackertaining. I mean, the book really has it all. And of course, you do have desserts in the book and
Yes.
I love dessert. And the problem with dessert right now, though, is that the new dietary guidelines for Americans just came out, hot off the presses. And it turns out that Americans, I'm not big into math, but Americans, get this, everybody, 13% of your calories, your daily calories, comes from added sugars. That's
a
on
lot.
average. And there's no nutritional value in added sugar. Think about you're just scooping sugar. So I thought since I have you on the phone, Mona, and you do have a dessert chapter in the book, and I know you want us to all feel satisfied and enjoy our dessert. What are some of your secrets to cutting added sugar from the diet, especially desserts?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I do, and we were just talking about it in the beginning before we went out on the podcast, is I like making desserts in pieces, in cookies, in little ramekins, because that's almost a really nice way of handling portion control. So we were just talking about the chocolate chip avocado cookies, right? So those cookies you can make 8 to 12, right? Based upon what size cookie you want. So one of the tricks that I use is just apportioning the dough or whatever into, if I want smaller cookies, I might have 2, but at least I know that I'm being mindful of my portions. So one of the things I do is make ramekins or make pieces of desserts. I have like cheesecake minis in my book or little ramekins, this personal pumpkin pie, which is great. The other thing is that I do is I like a lot of fruited desserts, but I almost do like what I call like an upside down fruited pie. So instead of doing a pie, which is heavy crust, heavy extra fat, extra sugar and things like that, I might do a nice crumble or like a apple crisp, which I have in my book, which is an apple blackberry crisp. And then I just make a very lightly sweetened crumble to just add on top. And then all of my natural sugars actually come from the fruit. And then I just have that little bit of a topping, which is then a nice other little trick on how you can apportion sugar as well. And just also mindful of just the amounts of sugar that you put into things. Like there's all this hidden sugar, right, Liz? Like with salad dressings and tomato sauces and yogurts and things like that.
Yogurt,
so my
yeah.
other, yeah, right. So my other trick would be is to just add it in yourself. Add in that 1 teaspoon, or even I'm a big proponent of using a teaspoon instead of a tablespoon, because you don't really need that much sweetness. Start with that 1 teaspoon. And granted, I'm telling you, it's going to be enough, So
yeah. So people who think, like, and I do this too. So if a recipe calls for a cup of sugar, the first time I make that cookie or whatever, I'll cut it down to 2/3 or 3/4, because even though we know sugar has certain qualities and imparts certain, browning and tenderness and moisture, it's got a reason for being in a recipe. Quite often, I find desserts are just cloyingly sweet. Like if I'm doing an apple crisp or a berry crisp, I let the fruit speak for itself. So I might add a tablespoon of brown sugar to the entire thing when somebody else might add half a cup, because you don't need that, and then in the topping, if you've got chopped nuts and oats, and I'll use oil instead of butter, for that crisp topping, cinnamon, again, a tablespoon of brown sugar. You don't need the half a cup. It's overkill. I think it's overkill.
Right. And there's also, I call my calorie-free dashes. So things like vanilla extract and cinnamon actually enhance the sweetness of the whatever sugar you're putting in. So you can reduce your sugar just by adding a little bit more of, a little bit more vanilla, a little bit more cinnamon can enhance the sweetness as well too.
And a lot of recipes will call for, baked goods will call for a pinch of salt. And I will use kosher salt. And that pinch of salt also accentuates the flavor of the dessert. It seems weird, like salt in a dessert. Yeah, a little bit. And that just kind of just gives it that little je ne sais quoi, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I like your idea though of like those individual portions, because that way, if you feel like, all right, I'm going to eat every cookie now, you can literally put them in a Ziploc, throw them in the freezer, and then you have your little individual portions so that you could say to yourself, yeah, I'm going to have a cookie every night after dinner because I like that. I want that. Why not? But you pull it out and it's not, just sitting there. So these avocado cookies, I have found that avocados this year have been phenomenal. They're just like, back in the day, because you and I, we were like big cooks back in the day. We were there. We're ahead of our time. You'd open up an avocado, and before you'd open it up, I'd always say, I'm praying to the avocado gods, please don't be brown inside all the time. And now they've been great. It's been a bumper year.
Right.
Can you tell us, though, what goes into those avocado cookies? Because it is one of probably the easiest cookie recipe. I'm not just saying this, that I've ever made. I am not
it's so good,
kidding you. I have a mini food processor, and that's how I created this recipe. I think you could smash and mash too, but talk us through this recipe.
Okay. Everybody, by the time they're done with this podcast, will have this recipe memorized because the ingredients are really easy to remember. So it's 6 ingredients. So remember the fraction 1/4. That's all you have to do. So you're going to put in 1 egg, 1 avocado, which of course you're going to peel and take the pit out and scoop it into your food processor. And then remember the fraction 1/4. You're going to add 1/4 of a cup of unsweetened cocoa, 1/4 of a cup of sugar, 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. And then you whir that in your food processor for about 10, 15 seconds. You may have to do it a couple of times because, the little bitties of avocado may come to the top and you have to kind of bring them down a little bit with a spatula. And then when it's all looking battery, you just add 1/4 of a cup of dark chocolate chips. I'm a big dark chocolate person, so I put dark chocolate chips. And then you just throw them on a cookie sheet for 350 degrees for 18 minutes, and you have moist, delicious, brownie-like cookies done. And what's great about them is that they're dairy-free, they're gluten-free, and they're just so, so delicious. And one of my tricks for that, how I like to serve it, of course, is eating it right when they're ready is always really good. But also, sometimes what I'll do for dessert, I might take a cookie and just microwave it for like 10 seconds and then just throw some berries on top and eat it like a dessert. And it's just, if you feel like you're eating like brownie a la mode, it's just so delicious.
I love that. And you mentioned the egg and the pinch of salt, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Pinch of salt, right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I love that idea because you said you sort of melted this gooey cookie. You've got the berries on top. It's almost like having chocolate sauce over your berries, and you're going to get the goodness of the avocado, all those hard, healthy, monounsaturated fats, good fats, and simple, and I ended up, when I scooped the batter out, I sort of plopped it on the baking sheet, and I used foil and I sprayed it with nonstick cooking sprayer. I think you said to use parchment. I think would have worked better, but I was lazy. I just used the foil. It was, at the ready, grabbed it. But I do have a sweet tooth. And so I like that there's not too much added sugar and that you can make them smaller if you want to. And I love the berry tip. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's good. Other things that I've added to it that's kind of fun. Sometimes I add a little cinnamon. I'm a Ceylon cinnabon fanatic. So sometimes I add a little Ceylon cinnamon to it. My husband is a mocha kind of guy. Sometimes I put it just a little bit of, if I have extra coffee, I just may put a little drip of coffee in there, and it's kind of has a little bit of a mocha taste, which is kind of good. One of my friends who's made this recipe actually turned the recipe into brownies. And so she made a couple of batches worth and put it in a brownie pan, and she made brownies out of it. And she said they were delicious too. So that's another option that you can do as well.
Yum. So easy. So easy. I was going to ask you about this pecan crusted chicken recipe with butternut squash. That's on page 75. I think it's weird to go from dessert back to chicken. But that recipe,
that sweet mode, that desserty mode, right?
I apologize, everybody, it's for is this a buzzkill? No, I promise it's not. But just quickly talk us through this pecan crusted chicken, because I love nuts. I love chopped nuts. I feel like this is the ultimate and family friendly recipe.
Yes.
And so just quickly talk us through that. And then we're going to wrap it up with talking about the Mona community, because today it's to me all about online and connecting with people. And I am blown away by the response to your book, but just talk us through this pecan crusted chicken.
Well, one of my big things, I love sheet pan meals because you only need one pan. Who likes to do dishes, right? So everything is made on one pan at 400 degrees. And so think of breaded chicken. We're going to combine some gluten-free breadcrumbs. And there's some good ones out there now. A combination of gluten-free breadcrumbs and pecans chopped up together. So that's your quote-unquote breading. And then instead of just adding egg, I combined a little bit of Dijon mustard and just a little bit of honey to it as your wash. And so basically you're going to bread or, pecan bread your chicken in this egg wash with mustard and a little bit of honey. And that's going to go in your pan, your parchment paper pan. And then you're going to add some butternut squash, and you're going to spray it with some olive oil, add a little bit of kosher salt, maybe a touch of cinnamon. And then your Brussels sprouts, again, spray it with some olive oil, add a little garlic powder. If you have some minced garlic and want to add that in it, you can too. And you just put the whole thing in the oven for about 20 or 22 minutes. Now, the secret with making sure everything gets ready on time is to ensure that your chicken breast is about 3/4 of an inch thick. And that's really a whole big thing with doing sheet pan meals, is making sure you cut up your butternut squash into small cubes so that they cook for about 20 or 22 minutes. So if you've gotten them pre-cut and they're still in those big squares, just cut them and quarter them into smaller pieces so that everything gets ready on time. And make sure your chicken breast is about 3/4 of an inch thick. So how do you do that? One way is that if you see it's hugely thick at the store, you can ask your butcher to kind of help you and just kind of take it thinner than that. You don't want it like cutlet thinness. You want it that 3/4 inch thick. You can use a little mallet and kind of hammer it down a little bit and to do that as well. But 3/4 of an inch is a perfect thickness. And then if you do that and put it on your sheet pan meal, have your butternut squash cubed, have your Brussels sprouts cut in half or even quartered, everything will be ready in 20 to 22 minutes. And talk about a great family meal, boom, done. And if you have a family of 4, or if you have a family, I have a friend of mine who has like 3 boys, what you can do is make double or even triple the recipe. This is a recipe for 2, and I purposely done that so that you know that half that recipe is for one person from a portion standpoint. So if you have a family of 3 boys and you want to triple or even quadruple the recipe.
I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, so what I would do is just maybe put all the chicken on one pan and then take another pan or 2 for the vegetables and just do it that way.
Yeah, there's many ways to skin that cat, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah, and we know those boys have a big appetite.
For sure.
So you've got a lot of people who are out there cooking. Now, I know early in COVID, you started doing Facebook Live every day, I want to say, and you were cooking along with the, with folks that way. And now you've got the book. And what I've noticed on your Instagram is that people are starting to make your recipes and to share them on social media, and then you're sharing them back out. And so how are you building community around this book? And then what's the kind of feedback you're getting?
Well, it's been pretty amazing because the book literally has been out for 3 weeks, literally 3 weeks. And I've been overwhelmed and just feeling blessed at the feedback that this is a real need and people are really looking for easy ways to make dinner and to build community. And I didn't ask any of these people to put these recipes up there and they're just doing it. And so how great is that? So one of the things I've built on Facebook, a Mona's Kitchen Satisfied community that you can ask to join. If you follow me, Mona Dolgov, I'll invite you to the Satisfied community to do that. And we just kind of share recipes. I might share a recipe. I might give a tip to kind of swap things out or do something a little bit different just to kind of create some spice and just to make this book really be a resource guide. The other thing that I'm doing over the past 4 months, I've started some online Zoom cooking classes where every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can come into my kitchen and we actually cook into the cookbook. And my student body has increased quite a bunch over the past 3 or 4 months. And we're just a great group of mostly women, and we just kind of cook together, and it's just been a lot of fun. I've done a bunch of corporate parties, kind of, lunch hour. When you're working all day and you just need a break, a lot of corporations might bring me on board to just break up the day a little bit and have a little cooking class, and people can prep dinner in time for dinner at the end of the day. So I do that as well. So my online cooking classes are starting. I have a 2021 class starting the beginning of January, and they go on for a month. And we just cook into the cookbook. I come up with a little menu. So that way, when you're done, you can eat your dinner, how great is that?
How do people find out? Well, yeah, give us like all your URLs and social, and how do people sign up for that Zoom cooking class, or how can they get into that private Facebook group? And I'll post a lot of these links. Maybe follow up, Mona, send me all the links to everything, because in the show notes, remember, everybody come to the show notes because we will have recipes there and all these links and the giveaway, but just tell people how they can connect with you.
It's very easy. Just remember my name. So it's Mona Dolgov, and the last name is Dolgov. So my website is monadolgov.com. My Instagram is Mona Dolgov. My Facebook is Mona Dolgov. My Twitter is Mona Dolgov. So if you go to any of those sources of social media, you'll find me. And on my website, monadolgov.com, under shop, there's a 4-week online cooking class. You can go look in there and learn all about it. So it's pretty easy, pretty simple.
So people can just sign up for the Zoom classes. You charge a fee, and then people can jump into that. Okay, great. Yeah. And then that private Facebook group, is that something like if I were to like you on Facebook, then you could see on there, it'll explain how to get into the private group?
Right. You can ask to be invited. If you search Mona's Satisfied Cooking Community, it's a private community. I'll let you in. So.
Okay. Send me a link to that.
Okay, we'll do.
I hope you let me in. If you don't let me in, I'll be like, oh gosh.
I think you're already
in,
Liz.
I hope I'm in. I better go double check that. Oh, good. I'm like, yeah, social media has really been sort of the lifeline for a lot of people, because not everybody, but a lot of people do feel, sort of homebound and disconnected with the whole pandemic thing. And hopefully that will be ending soon in 2021, so we can get back out and play again. But this was a great conversation. And I will tell everybody that I do love this book, but I think I made that kind of obvious during the interview. And I'm sure when I go into the kitchen, all of those cookies will be gone, because Tim, made the cameo. He went to eat lunch. He's going to, actually, I've sort of trained him now before he eats anything special to be like, am I allowed to eat that? Because, I'm recipe testing, I'm doing things, and I haven't taken pictures of that yet. So it's always a challenge.
So what are you making for the holiday? Anything special this week?
Well, let's see. So this podcast is being recorded at the end of December. It's going to run in early January. I don't know if I talked about this on my end of the year podcast, but Tim really wants mincemeat pies. Now, mincemeat is not meat. It's like this dried fruit combo. And I did find it pre-made in a jar. So that made half my life easy. Then together, we're going to make the pastry, which will be obviously, flour, which I'm going to use the 1-to-1, by the way, the Bob's Red Mill, and then butter. That's and there was an alternative one that used lard. And I said to Tim, I'm drawing the line, buddy. I am not, Liz Weiss does not cook with lard. I will cook with butter. So that's kind of the big thing we're going to make. And then I'll probably do some kind of fish dish. Simon's going to come and visit. So maybe something, it's this New York Times recipe I've made a few times with shallots and tomatoes. It's so good. Nice. What are you doing? What are you making?
What are we going to make? I don't know. I told Doug to look through Satisfy and pick out some recipes. So I think we may make the sweet potato shepherd's pie. So a nice comfort food.
Yeah, that looked good. And maybe what I'll do is make one of the other desserts from your book. Maybe that cheesecake looked awfully good.
The cheesecake minis are really, really good. So are the pecan sandies. Those are good too.
Oh, yum.
And one thing on,
I was going to say, or pecan, depending where you live.
Pecan.
Right.
One thing about mincemeat, I have a little trivial fact. So there used to be a mincemeat factory in Natick. Did you know that?
No.
Yes. And now it's an apartment building. But when I first lived here, it used to be like a mincemeat factory.
That's
how
weird.
I knew about it.
So basically they made it and then sold it pre-made, like in a jar or something.
Yeah.
Mincemeat. It sounds so dreadful, but it's like a dessert. But leave it to the Brits, right? Mincemeat.
Right.
It sounds like, ew. Like, what do you mean? It sounds like all chopped up. But yeah, it's like, you know how they do the fruit cake. They love the fruit. My mother-in-law, for her second wedding, because my father-in-law passed away and then she remarried, and she had this fruit cake. And I was like, okay, I flew all the way to England. I'm at this beautiful wedding in the back garden, and she breaks out the fruit cake. I'm like, no, I need chocolate. This is not working for me.
That's the one with the green maraschino cherries, right?
Yeah. And like lots of alcohol soaked in for, many days on end. So
yeah.
Anyway, not to diss my mother-in-law because she's lovely. Anyway, well, this was really fun, Mona. Thank you so much for hopping into the podcast, and thank you for doing a book giveaway. I know that people are going to be really excited, and then the show notes are going to be packed with all sorts of good information. We'll post a few of the recipes. So thank you so much for hopping onto the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been so fun. I just want to wish everybody a happy and healthy new year, and to really boost up that kitchen confidence. It's easy. And with my book, you'll be able to do that. And if you join my community, a lot of friendship. We have a great community. We've made lots of new friends from really all over the United States, which has been really, really fun. And my goal, as you know, is just to feel satisfied in every way, every day.
Fantastic. Well, I love it. And I love all the new vocabulary we learned today. So thank you so much.
Words.
Thank you, Mona. I appreciate it. Well, that was so much fun, and I'm so glad Mona came onto the podcast. I am going to tell you guys that 2021 is going to be a great year. We're going to eat great food together. We are going to learn a lot. We're going to have amazing guests on the podcast, and we're just going to keep it moving in a positive direction. I think we've had enough negativity for a lifetime. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast today. Don't forget to head to lizshealthytable.com/podcast. Show notes from today's episode, action-packed. If you love the show, tell a friend about it. Post a review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, thanks for listening to Liz's Healthy Table.